Welcome, everyone. We are here with Kerri Holder, and she is a teacher at Eminence Independent Schools, the School on Fire school that Buddy Berry and Tom, I can't think of his last name. Tom, your assistant soup, Kerri is?
Tom Coffey.
Tom Coffey, yes, yes. Anyway, so we're delighted to have Kerri here. Kerri is a Project Lead the Way and special area teacher for grades K through 5. And she has had her students pursue their passions 1 hour a day in the Personal Passions Project 9-week course. She also has been participating in passion projects for at least 4 years, as Eminence Schools has been doing that for over 4 years. But we're here to learn more about what she does specifically in her 9-week course and what her students are doing. So with that, let's hear from Kerri.
All right, thanks, Julie. So I have been at Eminence Independent Schools. This is my 5th year. And I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about my journey and this idea of passion projects, and then how a classroom teacher can then add this to their own curriculum and everything they do in their class in a variety of different ways. So my contact information is on my screen. If you have any further questions or just want to pick my brain a little bit, feel free to contact me. So the power of personalizing passion projects. When I came to Eminent Schools, one of the first things that was brought up in my very first professional development right before school started was passion projects would be coming up in the spring, and we all needed to know what we were going to be doing. The idea of passion projects comes from Google's 80-20, 80% work time, 20% pursuing those projects you find passionate, that you're passionate about. And Buddy Berry, our superintendent, and Tom Coffey, our assistant superintendent of schools, really wanted to see this implemented in our classroom. And then they decided to take it a step further and make it a school-wide thing. So my biggest fear when starting this was trying to figure out, well, I know what I'm passionate about, but how will my passion relate to a bunch of middle schoolers? And, you know, I love Disney. I love baking, and I love to garden, but I didn't know how I was going to get any of this to interest middle schoolers. I did try to ask Buddy to take us to Disney World, but he nixed the idea. So once I kind of identified what I was passionate about, then let me go back a minute. Once I discovered that, I kind of went to Buddy with an idea of just starting a garden at our school. Just something simple, but a way to beautify the area, get kids involved outside, understand what it is to plant and nurture and grow something, and then see the benefits of that. If you've met Buddy, and I believe many of you have, he quickly made that into a huge pollinating garden project that escalated very quickly. But we had spent then 4 school days where we worked from 8:30 to 11:30, and it was in beginning of March, where it is cold and rainy a lot of times here in Kentucky, and we totally renovated the large space and area. And I found that when, just like in your classroom, when you're excited about something, it's easy to spread that to your students. I continued with that idea in several other areas of teaching that year. One of those, we finished up a unit of study, and I still had about 5 weeks left of school, including some K-Prep testing, and I was trying to figure out what to do with that. So I talked with my students. If they had one area of science that they are most interested in, that they really love and would love to know more about, what would it be? I then grouped those students by their areas of interest, and then I said, I want you to design a lesson where you can teach lower elementary students about your love of this area of science. It's got to have learning targets, and you have to have a way of assessing if they've understood you. And you have to have an actual physical object that you create to help relate the content to the student. And the kids loved it and they ran with it. And I was running around everywhere where students had traveled on the weekend to Mammoth Cave and had made a video. It was changing that into a VR for kids to experience. And I had a group of girls creating a giant cave for the kids to walk into in the middle of what we call our Ed Hub. And we just had a ton of things and the kids loved it. After Buddy and Tom saw what we did, they asked me if I would consider heading a personal passion project class for middle schoolers that would happen 2 9 weeks out of the year, both in the spring. And I thought, sure, I can do this. I can do this. I'll treat it like a PBL. I can do this, much like what I just done. I've learned a lot, and I'm here to share some of that info with you. So what does my class look like? Well, we have established timelines. It's like having an hour of Pinterest projects. We have learning targets, weekly, daily goals, accountability partners, ongoing research, and then finally a presentation of learning. So let's back this up to the very beginning and talk about timelines. I don't know about you, but this is both what I personally sometimes find myself in, and definitely a lot of my students. So timelines was important. The thing about the class is it changes, the number of students change from semester to semester because my personal passion project class is considered an elective. And essentially students come into the class and they can pursue for the 9-week period anything that they would love to know more about, love to understand better, or it could be a way to be charitable and philanthropic. So one of the first things we do is establish our timelines. Now this is where things can sometimes get difficult for kids. In my personal passion projects elective class, they are not allowed to work with other kids. This is something I learned after the very first 9 weeks I did it. Because this class is about what you're passionate about. And while you may share passions with other people, another huge part of this class is being self-driven and disciplined to reach an end. So I found, like in most projects, when there's more than one person, someone ends up doing the majority of the work, someone doesn't do anything, or they get so caught up in having a good time and being off task, they end up in the panic, all the work while crying, and deadline aspect of the timeline. So one of the things we do is backwards planning. I give students a calendar of the weeks that we will be working. One of the first things we do is we mark out all of the dates where we won't be here. So we cross out weekends, holidays, scheduled days off for professional development. Then we start adding things in, like we have students leaving next week to go to our junior beta convention. So they mark out those dates. We know kids who every whatever day they are taken out to go to their allergist, or they were going to have an orthodontist appointment. Anything where they may not be in class, they try to get ahead of and put on the calendar. When we take all that out, then we add, when will their presentation of learning be? When will they have to have their presentation ready for the presentation of learning? Students soon see that it's not really 9 weeks. They have more like 5.5. So during that time we need to establish what's going to be done during that. To help us establish how they're going to spend their time, students have to create, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, learning targets. This is some examples of what some of my students have done, but they have to create a driving question and then specific learning goals or learning targets to help them get there. These are reviewed by me and also their accountability partner. These can change, they're fluid, but they still have to, any change has to be run by me. Because I've had students in the past say, well, that's too hard. I don't think I'm going to get that done, Mrs. Holder. And that's where we have a conversation about, well, what's making it hard? Why do you think it's too difficult to accomplish? And there are some times when students, it's just that lazy kid, or they've hit a roadblock and they either don't know how to get around it, which is mostly the case, or they have started to lose that passion that they thought that they had. So one of the hardest things is sometimes having a kid find what it is they're passionate about. Since this is the 4th year I've been doing this class, I have some kids that this is their 3rd time taking it. And so they come in ready. They know what they want to spend their time on. But others come in and kind of freak out because I have to do something by myself. I have to figure it all out by myself. And they get very nervous because they're not sure what it's supposed to look like. So one of the things I start, and I went by the slide, is I ask them to think of it as an hour of Pinterest projects. So when I found out about Pinterest a couple of years ago, I got really excited about it. I was kind of late to the game, but I started pinning all kinds of things. And then I actually started completing my projects and like posting a little something about, look what I got done today. And then my sister-in-law texted me to try to set me straight to say, Kerri, I don't think you understand Pinterest projects. We just pin them. We don't actually do them. You're making the rest of us look bad. But I know all of this. If you looked at my Pinterest page, I have like 40 things that just someday, when I have all this free time, you know, during summer break, and when I'm not tired, I am going to accomplish these. But the fact of the matter is, we have other things that occupy our time. And it's no different for students. So I asked them to consider thinking, if you had an hour a day where your day just stopped, and the only thing you could do during that hour was work on one of those Pinterest projects, what would it be? Now for us, a lot of us think about exactly how we would spend our time. But still for some of the kids, it's tricky. They don't know what Pinterest is, or it's still too wide open. So one of the first things we do in my class, after we've kind of established what the class is, what they're going to do, one of the first things we do is what I call funnel down. And we do that by, I give them 3 questions, 1 question at a time. They write the question in the center of their tape, in the center of a blank piece of paper. And the first question is, what have you always wanted to learn how to do? And then we just do a 2-minute free write of anything that comes to mind, no judgment. It's really just theirs. I'm not even really going to see it. But anything that comes to mind. So I get my timer ready, I clear off some space on my white-off board, and I do the same thing with them. And for 2 minutes, we write down whatever we can. At the end of the 2 minutes, I share with them and talk through the things I wrote down. At this point, I don't ask any students to share what they're thinking, because for a lot of them, it might be something they've never shared with other people, or they're maybe a little embarrassed about it. But I share with them all the things that came to mind. Then we get another blank piece of paper and we go to our second question. Our second question is, what is something you wish you understood better or more than you do now? This is kind of for those big ideas, for those kids that are kind of more research minded. And again, you just write everything. And I set 2 minutes and I do the same task again. And I really tried to throw everything out there. And I explain to them when I go over it, it's not just things I don't know about, it's things I wish I knew more about, things I wish I was more of an expert in instead of just general knowledge of. So I, just flood the board. The final question is another piece of paper, another circle. If you could help somebody, if you could help solve a problem, who and what would that be? 2 minutes on the clock, go. Right. So after we have all of those questions written, and all of those things filled out, I ask the students to kind of funnel down. We're going to start getting down to the more specific things that we really feel passionate about. So I asked them to choose the top 3 things from each of their papers we just did. That gets us to 9. Then from those 9, I asked them to get it down to 3. And then from 3, I asked them to pick their top 2. Here's why I go for top 2. Sometimes kids, I have realized, have multiple passions, but to be honest, it's just not something they can spend 5.5, 6 weeks on. It's really more of maybe a 2.5 week project. Because remember, they're getting an hour a day in my class to do this, 5 days a week. So sometimes students, depending on what projects they have left at this point, their 2 top things, they may end up trying to do 2 of them. And so how I term it is, let's make a timeline. Let's see what all it is you're going to do. If you feel you can get that done in 3 weeks and at least start on the second one and get, quite a bit done, if not completed in that time, then let's go for it. Let's pursue everything we can. Because I have found I would rather the kid be busy than be finished early and then wasting time and getting off track, and it becomes more of a whatever class instead of a really focused class. I will say this, last time I had several kids, this was just last week, several kids that were freaking out and like had no idea what to do. And as we started funneling down into that 1 or 2 things, and I was like, okay, just pick your top 3 from each one. They did okay. But then when I said get it down to 5, they started freaking out. They're like, I can't eliminate any of these. I'm like, sure you can, but keep them in your back pocket. You never know when you're gonna have more time to do this on your own. Doesn't have to just be in my class. So once you have your kids find their passion that they're gonna spend their time on, as I said, they're going to create a driving question. So for example, I had a student that this last time says, I want to, they had baking. And I was like, okay. And his was, I want to learn how to make a 3-layer cake from scratch. I said, okay, well, let's turn that into something that can be a little bit more, because I feel you can do a couple of days of research, try it at home one night, and then your project would be finished. So let's try to broaden this. So one thing you're hearing is I have then a personal meeting with each kid. Can last anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, where I look at their driving question and see how those learning goals meet that driving question. So with that same kid, I said, is it just cakes you're interested in, or is it desserts, or is it baking? And he was like, well, what do you mean by baking? And I was like, well, do you want to learn how to make your own bread, dinner rolls, a croissant, your own Pop-Tarts? He was like, I can make my own Pop-Tarts. I was like, of course you can make your own Pop-Tarts. So that kind of got him going. And then we started thinking about those skills he would need to be able to answer that driving question. So he had some understanding of baking, but there was a lot he really kind of realized he didn't know. So we started with some basic learning goals of what it is that you want to be able to do to accomplish that driving question. Earlier I said these can be kind of fluid, and that comes from research. Students are required to do research for the class. They have to interview an expert or someone who is knowledgeable in what they're wanting to pursue. They have to complete 2 other forms of research, and then MLA citations of that research. And a lot of times, I should say many times, students, as they start to begin their research, they realize what they thought was a good learning goal really needs to be a little more descriptive and a little bit more focused. Or sometimes what they think they needed to know, turns out they didn't need to know it at all. So it is fluid. Once they have this, the next thing I get them is their weekly and daily goal sheet. So this is an example of a student that he has family from Guatemala and he has family from Mexico. And he knew a lot more about his family's traditions from Guatemala than he did from his family's traditions in Mexico. And he really kind of had just this, something happened over Christmas where there was a picture shown and a conversation started, and he realized he felt like something was missing and he just wanted to know more. So that was his project. So on Mondays, they make their weekly plan. And it says what they're going to do on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday. These are their goals, their tasks. Once they have established this, and I've made a quick check on it, because at first sometimes it's just says like research. And I have to ask, can we be a little more specific? What exactly are you hoping to find out that day? How are you going to know you found out? What are some specific details you need to know? So it takes sometimes a little time, a lot of me showing them how I've done it, some past students' work, but we try to get this checklist going. After they have their weekly and daily goals, on Mondays, they meet with their accountability partners. This is something I didn't have right away, but it's something I developed later because with a large class, it was very difficult for me to get every kid in a timely manner to check how's their goal setting going, how's what they've decided they're going to do this week, is it appropriate, does it need to be more specific, how does it meet their learning target or their driving questions. And so I thought, well, let's put it back into the hands of the students, because by helping someone be more accountable, it keeps you more accountable yourself. So as you can see, the kids have their calendars and they are writing down specific things they were doing on each one. And then they meet with their accountability partners to share what their goals or ideas are for that week. And then they get feedback from their accountability partner or partners. And students have gotten really good at it, because I've told them that if I see that a student says that they accomplished all these things, but it's very obvious at the presentation of learning they didn't, it's not just that student that is at fault, but it's the person that he was accountable to that told him everything was fine. So they take it fairly seriously. After they meet with their accountability partner, they send me a quick summary, and they do that through Google Forms to let me know what the partner said, are they meeting their goals, do they need assistance or intervention from Mrs. Holder. So it's just a quick way. So they're really kind of having to state instead of just kind of keeping it to themselves, but to say out loud what their goals are going to be, how they're going to do it, and they have to explain how they'll know they've accomplished it as well. This is also a great time when they get feedback from each other, where I've had students say, oh, you know what you should do, or what I would want to know about, giving them little hints and feedback about what an audience member may want to know more about when it comes to their passion project. And sometimes it helps them, and sometimes the person says, well, that's really not what I'm trying to do, but I might keep it in my back pocket for later. So they do this on a weekly basis. On Mondays, they meet to talk about what they plan to do for the following week. And then on Friday, they'll meet again to say, did I get everything accomplished that I set out to accomplish? And this is also the tough questions of, well, why didn't you get it finished? You said you were going to find research or find understandings on these two things. Why didn't you do it? You had 4 days. And my kids know to be tough. They know that they're their friends, but they have a responsibility to them. They know that's my expectation, because they know that if they don't ask it, I'm going to, and then I'm going to ask them why they didn't ask it. So it really does make the kids pay attention, and they want to be ready. They don't want to have fluff or nothing there. One of the other things that this does is for kids who have signed up or been placed in my class thinking it was going to be an easy breezy study hall, kind of do whatever I want, they realize there's a lot of work entailed, and that they are the ones that are in charge of how their project will go. It doesn't have anything really to do with me or anybody else. Their success is solely dependent upon themselves, because they're creating a curriculum. They're creating the outcome. So accountability partners have really been working. I've changed a couple things. I keep testing a couple of things out to see if there's a better way for them to respond back to me, or to share information. because sometimes I can't read everybody's data from a Google form until later in the day. And so there are times when I'm let the kids know if it's something I need to know about, pretty quick, send me a little signal or drop something on my desk, or just come say, hey, Miss Holder, I think so-and-so needs some help. I can't seem to get through to them, or they're just not really doing the work you've asked them to do. So once they have accountability partners and they have their plans, then it's time to get to work. They do ongoing research of what they're trying to learn. So it might be things that come and go as they get into their learning goals, but it's generally a pretty big document where they start keeping track of the things they want to remember or hold on to or learn more about. And they have ongoing questions. So this is again, another fluid document that they continue to edit. This is also something that they share with me, especially if they have questions about what I think about it. One thing that I have added just recently, just literally this past week, is through our Google Calendar on Google Classrooms, I've made an ongoing appointment slot where kids have to set up appointments with me 2 times a week to sit and talk for 10 minutes about their progress. I'm also doing this in my design and modeling class because they have a big PBL project happening right now. And it allows us to sit down and have some one-on-one time, but it's their responsibility to set up that time. And so far, and I mean, I say so far, just that started today, but it really went well today. I had some kids that really took advantage of the whole 10 minutes. The rule is no one else can come and ask me a question beyond, may I, go to the restroom, kind of thing. And so it's really helped me focus my time to give to my kids to help them be successful. And it's also let the other kids know we can't bother Miss Holder right now. After ongoing research, then it's getting to work. So these are some past projects. The girl on the floor, she wanted to learn how to upcycle clothes. And part of that was learning to sew and learning how to work a sewing machine and learning how to do embroidery. And so that's her on the floor taking some measurements and getting ready to upcycle the shirt she found at Goodwill. The guy on the left, he has interest in being a physical therapist / what's the word I'm looking for? To work with different teams and stuff to help them know their exercises and get them in shape more on the collegiate or pro level. Forgive me for not knowing what that term is. But one of the things he was doing was wanting to also help his current football team and basketball team. So he wanted to create a jump box specifically for the teams that could be mobile and move from the weight rooms to wherever. So this was both having to do with the physical education field and sciences, but also more of the engineering where he had to learn how to design, cut, and then put together with our makerspace tool room. And there was a lot that went involved in all of that. I've also had students learn to play the guitar. So they bring their guitar in and they practice, which is fun for all of us in the classroom. Then these other kids, you can see they wanted to learn how to refinish furniture. And so they brought in some old furniture that one of them had in their barn. And they had to do some research and then do sanding. They learned that painting furniture is not as easy as just slopping some down with a paintbrush. Because after they put on a coat, I remember vividly 2 days later when it was completely dry, they came in. I was like, well, how'd it go? They go, Miss Holder, it looks terrible. They start criticizing each other. You're not even using the strokes we talked about. And this, again, was when I had some students multiple people doing the same project. And the fact of the matter is, some did real sloppy work, some did excellent work. There were a lot of arguments, and that was one of the reasons I turned it into just independent projects. The student, the boy that looks like with the dead thumb, it was exactly supposed to look like a dead thumb. He wanted to learn how to do special effects makeup. And he got really good at it. He started leaving the classroom with some really gross looking stuff. And what was amazing is he was just using some of those things that you see in the picture, glue and just basic little eyeshadowing and things like that. But he was really interested in it, and he was able to create quite a few neat things. The girl you see seated here, she wanted to learn how to use an audio-visual program to create kind of her own bio reel for going on auditions. And she started by just kind of creating some things about her classmates and kind of their year so far. She was a 7th grader at the time. And so that was her learning a lot of this different kind of software. And then she also did quite a bit at home as well. The girl that looks like she has a pen in her hand, she wanted to learn how to make jewelry, but she wanted to learn use resources that were easy to her because she didn't have a lot of money to spend for it. So she learned how to make jewelry and different decorative pieces from rocks. And that's just a little motorized filing thing. Actually, it's a nail file. And she started learning how to shape the rocks into the shape she wanted and creating images and things on them that she wanted. And then the other girl, this was her project. She bought that VW bug with her dad several years ago, and she always wanted to learn how to, to fix it. And now it was one of those things where she had to. And so she learned how to change the oil in her vintage bug and learned how to rewire a few things. After everything, they do a presentation of learning. Something that we do a lot of here at Eminent Schools are what we call museum days. And it's the idea of students set up their own, a lot of people think of it, what is it, a live museum or something, but they set up different stations, and then I invite everybody and everything, because we are a K through 12 school. K through 12 teachers are invited to attend, as well as our administrators, our board members who are incredibly supportive, everybody. And they have to prepare basically a little more than an elevator speech, more like 5 minutes, where they are going to present their project in its entirety, show some of the research and things that they learned, talk about their goals, weekly goals, their timeline they created, the help of their accountability partner. But then it's mostly about what was I able to do in that time that without this class I wouldn't have been able to. The girl with the little flower in her hair, she created her own natural cosmetics business. And she's showing how she created her own lip balms and how she's trying to turn it into her own business. And then there's my girl from before that taught herself how to play guitar, because she had always wanted to know. We also see the girl in the top corner. She is starting to present. She's presenting to her little audience what she was able to create in her audio editing and digital editing program. We see Abelardo showing off his jump box that he created. And then we see Caitlin down there with her rock jewelry that she did. So,
Kerri, can I just jump in real quick?
Sure.
So do you have any kind of guidance or guidelines for them when they are doing their presentation of learning? Like, is there a format, or they can just show whatever?
No, I do have a requirements of everything, and I'll be happy to share that with you all if anybody's interested, of all the expectations, and then what it looks like for a 4-3-2-1. We're standards based, but I also have another that I started with that was literally just all the requirements, how many points each area would be, and then what point value would equal to an A, a B, a C, or a D. So they have a requirements page that they get when they get their syllabus at the beginning of the 9 weeks. It's one of the first things that we look at. As far as how they present, I, in the past 2 years, have really come around to using Google Sites to create digital portfolios in my class where they can save all of their work and be able to showcase it to me at the end of the year. So they have the option. They can do a slideshow. They can do a Google site. They have a lot of different ways. I still have some kids that love a good old trifold board, and that's fine too, but as long as they have everything that's required of them. So yes, they get a document with their syllabus, so a little checklist of sorts that shows everything that is required for the grade, what will be graded, how it will be graded, and then that what should be included in their presentation of learning.
And I'm assuming this is in the daytime, right? During their
Yes, this is during daytime. So what happens is it'll be during our personal passion project class time in the Ed Hub. About a week, 2 weeks before, well, about 2 weeks before, I'll send out an email to invite all the teachers in their classes and ask for them to let me know if they're coming. And then I'll, a week before, I'll remind them again. The day before, I'll say, here's the times we're doing. If I've had a lot of good response, and I generally do, I may have to say, could you come in the first 30 minutes and then leave, or could you come in the last 30 minutes? Or I may have to tell a class, I'm sorry, we have a lot of kids already coming. What's awesome, and one of the things I love about teaching a K through 12 school is that my students may be presenting to first graders at one point, their peers, 7th, 8th graders, 6th, 7th, 8th graders another time, and then they may be presenting to one of our board members or a high school senior. So they have to tailor their presentation to their audience member. And a lot of times they have to do it on the fly. So I've had students that have been like, Ms. Holder, I was doing this and I wasn't quite sure how to make those first graders really understand. I had to think a minute. And then we get to talk about it. I said, well, what did you come up with? How did you make them understand that was different? And it helps a lot. So these presentations happen during the school day. The passion project that we do school-wide, those we have a presentation of learning at night that we invite the entire community to.
And have you ever had a problem where kids might have somebody in their presentation area, station area?
Oh, like a trouble, oh, they don't have anybody?
Yeah.
Depending on what the crowd is, as soon as they come in, and teachers know at this point, I've worked with them. Generally, I'll send the teachers a paper of questions that they can print out and have their students ask. I may even make copies of it if I'm really ahead of the game, and drop them off in their classroom. That these are the kind of questions you should be asking them when they come in to the Ed Hub. I can say, all right, everybody, well, thank you for coming. We're so excited to share what they've created with you. There should never be more than this many people at a time at one presentation. If you see a presentation where there is nobody, please go there first. And sometimes I have to go, hey, whoa, there's already 2 people over there. You need to go over here. So I am constantly milling around and making sure kids are going. I've had to sometimes go up and ask kids to leave, or, go up to a teacher, pardon me, and say, I think it's probably a good time to go ahead and round them up and take them back because either they're off task, or I've just, sometimes, you bring down the hammer and say, I need you to sit in this chair right here. I'll deal with you later. So we do it again. It's one of those things of trial and error and anticipating how we're going to do it. There have been times when we had a bunch of kids out sick, and so I did half a museum day, or I did a museum day one day, and then the next day, or when we got all the 6 students back, we did a mini one in my classroom. So it wasn't the great big area. You don't always have to have a great big area, but I only invited 2 classes that I knew that would come. One came at one point, one came at the other. And so they had a little bit of a bigger audience. It just kind of depends on what's going to work for you and your students.
That makes sense. And I think it does help have everybody in the hub area too, because then you can kind of see, versus if kids are in different places, then you don't know.
Absolutely. If I had a library or a gym or an auditorium, or something like that, that would be ideal. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So after we have our presentation of learning, students will do a self-assessment. One thing I'm doing this time around that's a little different, I am going to have them do a quick, just a very general self-assessment before they even do their presentation of learning, which is, you know, how ready do you feel and what grade would you give yourself based on the criteria? And then let them do their presentation. And after they do the presentation and give feedback, because quite honestly, their audience members, especially those elementary kids, will really put them on the spot and ask them tough questions. And depending on how prepared they are or how much work they've done, sometimes they can easily answer the question. And sometimes they realize they probably didn't do as much as they needed to. So part of their self-assessment is to grade themselves over all the criteria as I would, then to do a reflective writing with some specific questions that I asked, just, you know, about how do they think they use their time? What would they do differently? If you were to do this again, what might you do? And then with big projects like this one, in both my other classes and this, I'll have the student join me at my desk and we'll review all of their work along with the grading rubric and kind of talk about what we think each thing deserves. So if I look over a student's work and the requirements that went into that standards grade, and I say, I'll be honest, from what I'm seeing here, here, and here, and this, I would give it a 2, but I see you gave it a 3. Talk to me about why you made that decision. And there have been times the kid's been able to convince me. Most of the time the kid goes, you know what, I hadn't considered what you just brought up, so no, it should be a 2. And it's a nice opportunity to sit and kind of talk through the grade with the kid. Gives them ownership. It gives them a feeling of buy-in because they're in on it the entire time as well. The one thing about this though is there really is no opportunity for an alternate assessment of any kind. When it's over, it's over. So the 9 weeks, when it's done, it's done. That's another reason we have weekly meetings with me, because if I'm noticing they're not progressing on their learning targets or they haven't done this yet, I can kind of pull them back and get them to where they need to be. Because, you know, our students are used to a second chance. And in this thing, they don't really get one, which is difficult to find a reasoning to, which is one of the reasons I added the weekly meetings this time, to try to help me stem even a reason to have any kind of alternate assessment. Another thing that came up after the first time, I was just going to have the presentation of learning, and that I had my students wanting to see each other's presentations. And I hadn't thought about that, but you know, they had their heads down working on their project. And while they had an idea of what other people were working on, they didn't necessarily know the depth of it. So if time allows, and I say that because you know how it is, things come up. Teachers go on strike, snow days, schedules get changed around, new things get thrown at us that the administrators maybe forgot to tell us, whatever. We're out sick, all kinds of things. So sometimes our schedules get changed around, and what we thought we had 6 weeks, we really only have 5 weeks. And so if time allows, they will do their presentation of learning a second time, but then they'll do it to the class that we have instead of inviting more people. If a child is sick for our presentation of learning, they'll do it to the class. And I might even ask one of our administrators to see if they have a moment to drop in so that they have the opportunity to kind of go beyond just the peer group, since everyone else had that opportunity. So with this, as far as where do you start, because I know not everybody out there is getting their own very 9-week course to do whatever they want with. So where do you start in your classroom? Well, if you have one teacher, one class, it's easy to start there. You know, we're all about student choice, about giving kids an opportunity to pursue. I developed a unit a couple of years ago where we were doing a novel study, but I wanted it to be more than just that. And so we read this fantastic book called Saving Wonder by Mary Knight, about a child in the Appalachian Mountains who is smarter than he likes to lead on, but hides it. But then he has this opportunity where coal mining is going to come in and disrupt everything he loves in his community. And he's got to be willing to kind of take a chance. And the theme of the unit was what makes something worth fighting for. So after we did everything you do with a novel study, I asked the question, what do you think is worth fighting for? And then kids designed something to assist something they thought was worth fighting for, whether it was animals at an animal shelter or better awareness to the homeless needs of our community, or physical education. I think we should have a fun run to help promote physical education. And so students, for their final summative assessment, did their very own basically a passion project. So a passion project doesn't have to be open to just whatever whim they have. You can really narrow it down, but still give them some choice in the matter of how they pursue it. We have different grades that do whole grade level things. Especially in our elementary area, we'll have an entire 4th grade team do a thematic unit. And part of that thematic unit is basically a passion project where they pursue different things. We do a school-wide one, as we talked about. It could be a school-wide that's all focused on one thing, or it could be like we do, where it's school-wide, but it's all driven by the teacher's passion and students getting, an opportunity to get into something they maybe never would have before. I also suggest an after-school club where you meet, and it can be once a week, it can be twice a week, it's whatever best fits your schedule. But again, an opportunity for kids to have time, that hour of Pinterest projects to spend their time on. Something else that we have talked about is maybe during fall school. So, during our fall break, we have a 2-week fall break. Students have an opportunity to do standards recovery. And, it could be designed to a PBL sort for their standard recovery. There's a lot of things that could happen during that time. Also, in our area, we have a large amount of kids we have a high poverty risk in our community. And one thing that our school does an excellent job with our Student Resource Center and Family Resource Center is create opportunities for those kids who have nowhere else to go, or they would be left home to their own devices. It's primarily elementary and some middle, where they come and they spend basically either 8 to noon or 8 to 3 learning and doing all kinds of things during that time. This could be one of them. And then finally, an enrichment class. We always have students that need extra help, whether it's reading recovery or math. And while that is only a certain population of students, those other students could be working towards something they're truly passionate about and what they want to learn. And there's a whole variety. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. How you personalize passion projects and how you can hopefully encourage your kids to kind of step outside their own thinking. One of the mottos of my classroom is, if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. So if they're wanting to do something incredible and memorable and awesome, they got to be willing to put some risk into it and try things they've never tried before. So that's kind of it.
I just want to say I appreciate the tweaks along the way that you have put in place and really trying to set kids up for success. I think that, when I hear teachers say, yeah, we did that or we tried that, but that didn't work so well and they kind of gave up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice that you have leadership that, is really wanting to see that continue and it not be just kind of a one and done. But I do believe that, lots of reasons. I mean, I do believe that many of the reasons why it doesn't work is because they're not those supports that are in place. That I think you're really trying to keep that project lifted up, and you're providing opportunities for kids along the way, to be set up for success.
Well, and I'll be honest, when kids get going on personal passion projects, you're just kind of left sitting there, because then they're like, leave me alone, I got work to do. And then I'm like, well, I wish I could work on a personal passion project.
Yeah.
And some of them said, you should, Mrs. Holder, you should be working on your Pinterest project. That's one of the, I mean, and that is another thing I found myself is that I would just kind of let them go. And I wasn't as focused on what they were doing sometimes because I kind of had some time to get caught up on grades. I kind of had some time to prep lessons. And so, but I mean, quite honestly, I was getting bored. And so that was one of the reasons, and that's one of the reasons I set up the weekly meetings that they have to have with me, because quite honestly, it's keeping me busy. And it's also doing a much better job of me being aware of specifically how they're spending their time. It's funny, it's definitely quiet in my room during that class period because I let the kids listen to music as long as it's not disruptive, as long as it's, appropriate. Who doesn't like listening to music when they're working? So they all have their earbuds in, they're totally focused, and it's just silent in here. And I was like, I've got to find more to do with myself where I can be, as you said, a support to them and, help them get things going. I had a kid today who she's really wanting to learn more about photography and editing, both with her camera, both with her phone, but also she'd love to learn how to use a nice camera. Well, we have some from the yearbook staff that they're not using. And so I was able to secure one for her today. And today was about her just kind of playing with the camera a little bit and reading how to use it. And she was psyched. She was so excited. And, sometimes kids just don't understand the resources we have here. I'm like, well, have you ever heard about this? They're like, no. And then, it's fun to be part of that journey for sure. I really do love it. It's a lot of fun.
I can see that. Leslie, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
I just wanted to pull out, because I put in the chat, but I don't think that goes in the recording, and re-emphasize how impressed I was with the calendars and organization and just those life skills that you help scaffold and embed in there. The self-assessment ahead of the presentations, right? But that calendar, right, or timeline right at the beginning, you have 9 weeks, but when we cross this off, what do you really have? And just, I don't know, that just really spoke to me, that emphasis on things that will make sense 30 years from now.
Well, and it's interesting because I remember, and I mean, this was until recently, we issued kids student planners, paper planners, but a lot of them don't use it. If they have something, they put it in their phone. But I will say students that have gone through that process with me, when we come up to our next big project, they immediately ask for a calendar. Ms. Holder, do we have a calendar for this? Did you not give us calendars? I need a calendar. And there are some, and then they're like, Ms. Holder, do you have any extra calendars? Because I'd like to use one for my math or something like that. So it is. And quite honestly, it comes from me needing to write everything down. I have multiple journals all around here. But I am a list maker. And so I see the benefit of it. I see that benefit of backward planning in my own personal life. And I usually give an example of me using one. A lot of times it's planning Thanksgiving dinner. I know this is the date. I know these are all the things I'm going to need. When do all these things need to be done? Where am I going to get them? How much is that going to cost? Things like that.
I also think too, I appreciated how you were asking the kids about the particular skills that they would need. So if they want to learn how to do something, what does that all entail and how should they think about it? I think that's important too, because it's, one thing, oh, I want to do this. Well, but let's break it down, really helping them understand that. Yeah. So, and then do they, when they are figuring things out, what do you connect them with people, or are things do they just find that themselves on YouTube, or how are they learning how to do some of those things?
It's a combination of things. For the girl who wanted to learn how to play guitar, my colleague next door, who also teaches Project Lead the Way, is a very accomplished musician and can play multiple instruments. And I said, you might want to interview Miss Waddell And she said, do you think she would teach me? And I said, listen, sweetie, I don't know about that, but she could give you some advice. And Kendra was generous enough to say, I'll tell you what, on Tuesdays, if you want to meet me at 7 in the morning, I'm happy to go over a couple of things with you if you want to play things for me. And she also, because of her expertise in it, was able to say, go to this website, check out this tutorial, call these people. And that helped her a lot. So that is kind of my goal. My role is almost a Willy Wonka of, you want this? Then let's figure it out. I've got it right here. I don't know, but we're gonna find somebody. I have a friend that's an engineer for Lockheed Martin. He's a head project manager. And one of my kids was wanting to understand more about what that engineering was and how to become one. And his was a smaller project that he did with another one as well. And so I worked it out with Tim to get a call in, and he Skyped him. And it was like, we had to reschedule it at one point. And the kid came in, he's like, why? I'm ready for my thing. I go, well, we've got to do it tomorrow. And I like, why? I go, because he's testifying in front of Congress today about defense funding, and then he's flying to California. So you're going to talk to him tomorrow when he's in his hotel. And he was like, oh my gosh. But it was really exciting for him to be able to talk to somebody like that. And there are times, let's just be honest, I got to kick some kids in the pants because they're not doing anything. And I'm not going to pretend that every project is just amazing, because there are some that turn out to be real duds. Yeah. And, that's just the way it is. I will also say I've had the support to, if I see in that first week, a kid cannot get focused or does not seem excited about something, or whose continual answer every time we dig down is, I don't know. That kid and I will have a conversation of, I wonder if this is really the class for you. And I am, we can move him to another elective or to another elective if needed, which is a huge benefit. And I don't take lightly, because I know me taking a kid out of my class is just putting a kid in another class that could already be crowded. Mm-hmm. So we really do try to make it work. But Dr. Betty really wants this class to be viewed as a privilege and not a way to get out of doing stuff. So, and that has been, I've had some times where kids were off task a lot. I had way too many kids in here. I wasn't keeping track of their work very well. And it was obvious on their presentation of learning. And, not only were they embarrassed, I was embarrassed because that was the product that came out of my class. So every time I do the class, there's some tweaking, there's some things I notice better. Oh, and at the end, I asked the kids to give me feedback through a Google form about what they liked, what did they think could have been better, what could I have done better for them. I asked them to kind of evaluate each area of the class and how we kept track of things. And, they're brutally honest. They'll say, well, Ms. Holder, I wish we'd had more time. But sometimes they're like, Ms. Holder, I wish you would have told me what to. I'm like, well, that wasn't my job. That wasn't it. So a lot of reflection.
That's not on me.
Yeah, that's it.
It sounds like, though, your kids, just everything that you have done from the pre to the, to the start, beginning, or start, the middle, and the end, that you really, really are thoughtful about and intentional about the different components. And it really sounds like kids, especially how you help them think about those 3 questions. They're not necessarily in the same area, right?
Right.
And then, you really help them narrow, and it's possible that they could do 2. So I would love to have been a part of your class, because I think that there's so much that kids learn about themselves that they would never have known about themselves, without the opportunity. So I commend you and you being a reflective practitioner, and always trying to make it better for kids and always keeping them at the center. And I just want to thank you for your expertise, your time, and all that you do as a teacher for kids. We need more teachers like you out there. So Yeah, thank you, Kerri. It was great to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you, Julie. I've really enjoyed it.
yeah, and I'm so glad that Tom and Buddy, you know, suggested that you share. So very much appreciated. And with that, we'll conclude here.